live. Featuring me from at NA Harness Update, the Ray Catolo. With that said, I'm going to try and break out of the monotone and inflect into my voice various pitches of both charismatic and appealing nature. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Often Pacing Live. I am your host, who is gradually getting closer to his monitor, Mr. Ray Catolo. Now, it's Mr. in some jurisdictions. Others may say Mrs., but those people just do not appreciate my version of masculinity. Now, today on this show, it's funny I start out like that because we have with us, in a moment, we're going to call on Hannah Miller, who is not only one of the top amateur drivers in the sport, really, because I remember a couple of years ago she went over to some country in Europe. I want to say like the Czech Republic. It seemed like one of those obscure places that you wonder, they have harness racing? Everywhere is harness racing, believe it or not. But she even went over there and competed in the World Amateur Harness Drivers Championships. And also, by my pronouns, she's a woman. But that's for more. That's just an interesting thing, I guess. I don't really want to make a big deal about it because we'll talk. We'll get Hannah Miller on. We'll get her on before I keep talking. I am only partially caffeinated at this moment, so if you bear with me, folks. But going to join us right now is again one of the top amateur drivers in the sport, who's being dialed in. Still being dialed in.
Hello?
This is Hannah Miller. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right, I think. I'm not sure just yet. So, as I introduced before you came on the air, you are not only one of the top amateur drivers in the sport, but you're also you're like one of a handful of female drivers I can even name, female people even in harness racing, and that either speaks poorly for harness racing or for the fact that I can't name anybody else that's a woman in the sport. Let's just think it's the latter of that. But the first thing I want to ask you is, with that in mind, do you necessarily consider that when you're out driving, or does it not really cross your mind?
Sometimes it crosses my mind. Not always. Like, once I'm on the track, I don't think about it. I don't think, like, oh, I'm the only girl out here. But, when a lot of people ask me, if I think about going professional or something, yeah, that's when it really comes to mind. Like, there's no professional female catch drivers right now. There are some females that drive for themselves. They drive their own horses. But there, in the United States, are no female catch drivers. So that's when it comes to the mind the most.
Well, with you also brought up an interesting question. Because you've been driving amateur for so long and doing fairly well in the amateur circuit, have there actually been thoughts about moving to be professional?
Yeah, of course there's thoughts, and there's actually, there's been other amateur drivers that have come up to me and, said, like, we think you probably should go professional, or kind of like you need to move along kind of thing. And I think about it all the time, but right now I'm doing it and I have fun, and that's my main goal, is to have fun with it. And I think once you switch over and it becomes a job. And I think as a girl going into that, it would, like almost like 20 times harder just to be a female catch driver than it would just be if I was like a guy going to be a catch driver.
Mm-hmm. Well,
If that makes sense.
I also feel like the amateur drivers are saying that just so they can start winning more races, because you're taking all of the races, Hannah.
Maybe.
We both know that's kind of true, but
Yeah.
So then let's kind of go back in time a bit, because before you even started driving horses, you had to at one point think about driving horses. So your father, of course, is trainer Irv Miller. You are the sister to Marcus Miller, who just finished third in the World Driving Championship. Slight round of applause for that.
Yep.
But I take it, being on the barn, or being on the farm, not being on the barn, that I don't know how you got on the barn, but being on the farm, you obviously kind of helped your dad, maybe drove a couple horses here and there, and that's where it kind of got ingrained into your head.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been in a barn for a long time, ever since I was young. My dad has always had a stable since I was born, so I was younger and I would start going to the barn, and you kind of get a feel for it. And my dad bought me my first racehorse in Lexington, Kentucky, and he was like, now it's your job. Like, you need to take care of this horse. You'll learn about it. And so I started doing that. I loved being around the horses from the get-go, but I was not really interested in that time, being on the track. And then one day, it's like, the horse that I owned and was taking care of actually had just trained a really fast mile, and after that he was like, you could jog it one lap around, just kind of get a feel for it by yourself. I mean, I jogged with my dad before, but that was the first time I went out there by myself, and that was fun, and kind of went from there. And I started jogging a little bit here and there, and then my dad, the first time I turned a horse and trained a horse, he kind of tricked me into it, because he said, go up and just warm this horse up, go 3 laps, and then I'll pick him up and I'll train him. Well, when it was time for him to pick the horse up, he's like, okay, turn and let's train this. So we went, turned, and trainer trip, and that I still remember to this day. It was like one of the coolest, funnest things I've ever done, and that kind of got me where I wanted to go faster. And then one day he asked me to jog in a qualifier, and it just kind of went from there. I never really sat down and was like, okay, I'm going to be a driver. Like, that never happened. I never really thought I wanted to do it, but once you go faster, you just want to do it more and more.
I thought it was be like a point where she's like, wait a minute, he tricked me. It's been like 4 years I've been doing this.
Exactly, and I'm glad he did, because if he said, you're going to go out and you're going to train this one, I would have been so nervous before. I didn't want to mess up or anything, and I had no time to be nervous. I just did it, and that was my only option, and it worked out.
It's incredibly interesting how just like that slight change in perspective can totally change your entire outlook on anything, really. But going off of that, then you start driving in races. Oh, what year was that? That had to be like 3 or 4 years ago.
I would say, actually, time flies, but yeah, I think it was probably like 4 years ago. My first 2 years, I only drove in 2 races each, and those were just amateur races at the fair, where I grew up. So that was pretty slow. And then after that, it got much faster, a lot more drives.
Now, when you went out and drove your first race, then how exactly did you handle that?
My very first race, I was very nervous. I remember, I talked to my dad a lot about it. And, and I had trained a lot of horses with my dad, and we go fast and we train in sets. And he knew I was ready for it, and he wouldn't let me do it if I wasn't. But I was so nervous before, and it was a horse that he pulled pretty bad warming up, but once you went to the gate, he was fine, and that kind of made me nervous too, because I never went that fast with that particular horse. Mm-hmm. But once I got on the track, I seemed to calm right down and be fine. I knew what I was doing, and it's different. It's definitely different going behind the gate in an actual race. Even if you've been behind the gate in a qualifier, it's still different in a race. But I enjoyed it. I finished second my first race, and I was ready to go back for more.
Now, when would you say you started to kind of like gain your footing as a driver?
It took me a while. I feel like probably my first year, I was still, so fresh, so new to the sport. And the thing is, I kind of just got thrown into some of these big tracks. Granted, it is amateur racing, but it was my first couple years of driving, and I was already at the Meadowlands in Yonkers, and it was awesome to drive there, but that was kind of a big deal, Mm-hmm. And then probably the second year where I was really driving a lot, I really started to gain some confidence and do well, I think.
Well, those amateur races can also turn out to be gigantic rodeos, so there's
for sure.
Yeah. There's also that kind of pressure too, because it's like, why is Yarok 5 wide down the backstretch? There's no one ready to the inside of him.
Right. Yeah. That's how amateur races are, and you can't predict. You can try to look at the program, and you kind of have to go by the drivers almost sometimes more than the horses. Mm-hmm. You kind of can get a feel of what they're doing and where you want to go and in the race. But they're amateur races. It seems like the first quarter, everyone's going as fast as they can.
And then it was I was trying to remember too. You were in the World Amateur Driving Championship. Was that last year or 2 years ago?
That was last year.
That was
almost this time last year, actually, in Hungary.
Hungary, that's right, because that's what I am right now.
Yeah, that was an amazing experience.
What exactly was that contest? I take it was kind of laid out the same as the World Driving Championship. Then.
Yeah, it was. It was just more on a smaller scale. So we didn't travel to all those tracks. We had 6 races, and there's 12 drivers from different countries in those races, and the first 3 races actually went the opposite way, backwards, and it was fun. It was definitely different. We didn't, we only had the 6 races, so there wasn't near the races they had in the World Driving Championship. Mm. But it was so much fun and so much different than driving in the United States.
And when you got that invitation, of course, obviously, it's just like, wow, This is actually kind of like the signal of I might be as good. I might be better than I think.
Right. I honestly, I didn't even know that there was that. And then Joe Feraldo asked me, and of course I was like, absolutely. I get, you don't get that kind of chance any day. So I went, and the whole experience was amazing, and it felt like, actually doing well over there. Felt like, okay, maybe I can kind of do this.
So now today you're still driving out there amateurly in the GSY and any amateur series really that you can get your hands a hold of. Is that's currently the plan? Just to kind of stick to that route?
For now, I think I enjoy it. The biggest thing is that I have fun. I can stay the amateurs, and I do plan on driving, and regular races a little bit more. Even if it's just my own horses, just to get you. I think that's one way that I'm gonna grow and learn as a driver is to compete against professionals.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what's really gonna help me. But I do plan on maintaining my amateur status, at least like giving my 5% as far as that's concerned for a little while still.
And when you say your own horses, you talking some training endeavors?
Well, the horses like I own like there's several horses that I own right now, some
Okay.
trotters, and like I would just instead of driving them, if there's not an amateur race one week or whatever, I could just take them over to Freehold and drive that horse there or something like that.
Now, when you're out at the track during these amateur races, of course, you sometimes have a chance to interact with people at the grandstand and such. Do you necessarily like how do people react to seeing you as a driver?
I feel like most of the time, like in the grandstands, or if it's like a meet and greet or something, like I get a lot of positive. A lot of kids, a lot of little girls are like, "Oh, look, she does this. Maybe I can do it one day." And that is probably like one of the best feelings that I've ever had. And it actually happened when I went to Italy to drive. I was in the grandstands in a country, where they don't even speak English, and I was walking around, and a little girl was shouting Hannah, Hannah, and I turned around, and I don't know this girl. I've never met her. She's from Italy, and I talked to her older sister actually, and she spoke a little English, and she says she watches you and she wants to be just like you one day. I'm like, it almost brought a tear to my eye. I'm like, that's why I do this. You know what I mean?
Mm.
That to me means everything in the world.
Well, just hearing that too, it all one thing we never really consider out here in the U.S. is how actually international this entire sport is, and how a lot of people really gauge in on the U.S. as like the central hub for harness racing.
Right? Yeah, it is. It's crazy how when I have traveled overseas, and it's all over. It's not just here.
Now, have you done any other kind of trips internationally of some sort to do any kind of driving, or just that World Amateur Championship last year?
Yeah, yeah. So I did the amateur driving championship in Hungary, and then actually the first time I went over was Spain, Mallorca, Spain, which is a beautiful place. And they mostly over there, they race, they love it, but they mostly just do it as a hobby.
Hmm.
I raced there the first time, and then I went to Italy and raced in some amateur races there, which is so fun.
And Italy is they're smaller tracks too, aren't they? Or they're same size.
It, they're about the same size.
Yeah.
It was in Mallorca, Spain, that it was small. It was smaller than a half, and
Ooh.
we went farther. So they actually had to ring a bell on the last lap to let us know.
God,
Otherwise, you just keep going around and round.
that brings like high school track and field memories back to my mind.
Exactly.
Uh, so then, the one thing I was gonna say too is, I guess the best way to know like I've actually made it as a driver is when you're passing the grandstand. You lost the race, but you came close, and then there's someone just yelling at you, "Why couldn't you win the race?" Like they would yell at any other driver. Just like I am just like them.
Right.
Ah, but then that's basically I don't really know what else to ask because you're still so fresh in your career. There's still so much for you in the
Right.
future. Go because you haven't even decided to go pro. Do you even have like a time span of that in mind?
It's tough. I mean, what do you? It's tough to say. Like, yes, like in a year I'm gonna turn professional, but it's so hard because there's not another like female catch driver in the United States that's like paving the way. Like, I would have to be like me going out there and I'd have to probably do what other female drivers do and drive their own, and it's tough to say if anyone's going to put me down. I mean, like, I've had success in the amateurs, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to turn over into the professional realm, and that I'm going to get drives there. It makes me a little bit nervous to like give up my my amateur status to turn professional and then not get any drives. You know what I mean? Like, I like driving so much that I don't want that to get taken away from me almost.
Well, do you feel like by doing the amateur races too, you kind of are able to network more with these trainers and kind of secure drives of that kind, or is it really that up in the air?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in the amateurs, there's races for amateurs. They go for decent money, and if a horse trainers have a horse that fits this week but won't fit next week, they figure this spot, they can put me down, and I've had good luck in the amateurs, so I feel like in this I can get drives, but who knows outside of that, how many drives or if it'll even work.
Well, those are all fair questions, and I'm not supposed to be here to say it's time to go pro, Hannah. It's finally time. I just remember there was one memory I had because I bet the horse you were driving this. It had to be Hambo last year or Breeders' Cup, something around that time, and you were driving like Jack Up Lindy or something. It was a horse for Nick Surrick. And I see all the time. I can't remember the horse's name. And the horse made a break down the backstretch. I was standing next to this guy, and he asked me, "Who's that horse that broke in the backstretch?" I told him, "Well, it was the horse you were driving." And at first he asked it like very innocently. It was just like he's curious. But then afterwards he just starts listing off every slur he can think of. "Oh, that no good dumb horse, piece of crap!" And for like 5 minutes straight, right after the horse has crossed the line. That's just a fun memory I have. It doesn't affect you in any way because, well, the horse broke, and that's unfortunate, but that's also how the sport goes.
Yeah, I think it was probably Jack Stope, and there was
That's it.
Was it Harris, Philadelphia?
Meadowlands.
Oh, was it the Meadowlands? Well, yeah, it happened there too. That horse is very funny. It's very tough to drive. He's very hot. I've had a lot of professional drivers have drove him and come off the track, and they're like, "I don't know how you hold this horse. Like, he was so aggressive for me," and that kind of gives me a boost because sometimes I can hold him.
You can also say to the trainers, "I'm the girl that can handle Jack Stope." I was about to say Jack Up Lindy again, Jack Stope. You should put me up on foil again.
He's a little tough sometimes.
Well, Hannah, it's been more than a pleasure. I've enjoyed talking to you. I'm glad you decided to come on here onto the Off and Pacing broadcast. We're glad to have you. Glad to advertise not only the shining stars of the sport, but the up and coming stars. We hope the best for you.
Yes, I'm glad you guys invited me. This is fun.
All right. Well, Hannah Miller, good luck in your future endeavors. We hope to see you pro one day.
Thank you.
Hannah Miller, everybody, for joining us. Thank you again. So now, that said, 3 minutes and 40 seconds until the NAHU Champion Stakes. Now, of course, the NAHU Champion Stakes, named in honor of the harness racing broadcast that not only I host, well, I do the majority of the hosting. That was giving me the title of host. But I'm also joined by my co-hosts week to week, Mike Prebosi and Rod Alms Jr. Mike is not here because he is off saving lives like the little good doctor boy he is. And Rod just Rod never comes on here. But North American Arts Update, of course, Fridays at 9 p.m. on SRN1, 148.ca/1. We're fresh off a show from last night where we talked about the Nassagaweya Stakes, the Eternal Cam Nations, and the Canadian Pacing Derby limbs, all of which are tonight at Mohawk Racetrack, and Mike Prebosi gave out a $300. He hit a $300 pick for. He didn't give out a $300 ticket it cost $300. Too many words to say one simple thing. Mike gave out big money last night, and those are some of the reasons why you should watch. Besides me, I feel like I'm a very amiable person. I feel like amiable is like the French way to say amicable. That always gets mixed up in my mind. With all that aside, I have some caffeination. Let's look at this field for the NAHU Champion Stakes. The NAHU Champion Stakes, 3-year-old pacing event. Of course, it's a pacing event. There are no trotters in this race. as I get a little bit more caffeinated this morning. 10 lining up. Let's just go inside out. Black Train Blues for Bellringer Wins Stable. Trackstar National for Racetrack Ruler. JMC Dragonstone for the JMC Standardbred Racing. Midnight Special for Green Gables. YG Swift Run for the Rack Pack. Killer on the Loose for T. Pez. Fantastic Hallback for Eagle Farm 32. Spaghetti Arms for JBBB. Silver and Gold Boomtown. And Tony Slugger Racing for Haskell Racing. Now looking through this field, lots of high earners in this race. Starting to the inside, Black Train Blues, a winner of 49 races and 80 starts, has over $7 million banked, coming in off a 4th place finish in the NAHU Champion Stakes in 48-4. That was actually back 4 starts ago. Since then, has finished 3rd in an open over at the Meadowlands in 48-4. That's pretty fast for the Meadowlands racetrack. To go 48-4. Has a 46-4 mile in his card too in the Camfella Stakes, a prelim of that. Also, JMC Dragonstone, an earner of $6.2 million in only 30 starts, has won 19 of them off a 146-3 second place finish at the Big Show against older horses, a filly and mare open, and before that was second in a 3-year-old open over at Hilltop Park, going in 46-2. This horse definitely has a lot of speed, even though 46 at Hilltop is comparable to like 47, comparable to like 47 at a moderately fast track. Still, a horse that can go 46 at Hilltop Park is definitely one to watch. Interesting entry here. YG Swift Run only earned about $500,000 in his career. Winner of 10 races and 59 starts. Is Frank Affronti aboard, coming off a 150 win in the first round of the Syracuse Pace over at the Syracuse Mile. Was 3rd in a NAHU Champion Stakes prelim, going in 49-2. Closing ground from post 10 to finish 3rd. Now, I'm just making sure that the feed is up because I make that mistake sometimes because I'm moving so incredibly fast. Finally, Killer on the Loose has earned $13 million, winner of 70 starts in 91 outings. Fantastic Halfback has earned almost $13 million, won 57 out of 89. This is one of the most competitive divisions of the NAHU Champion Stakes that I have seen to date, and it's lining up, folks. The $1 million NAHU Champion Stakes is in motion and approaching the start. And now this field is off and pacing. Killer on the Loose from the center of the track is firing out. Silver and Gold from the far outside leaves as well. Trackstar National parked to the outside of Black Train Blues, protecting his position as they move around that first turn. 3 wide as Killer on the Loose holds a narrow lead from Black Train Blues to the inside. Then in between horses, Trackstar National paces 3rd. Fantastic Halfbacks boxed in 4th. Catching cover, Silver and Gold to the outside. 5th of Midnight Special pacing 6th as Killer on the Loose swoops to command off a 25-second opening quarter. Moving to the backstretch, Killer on the Loose in front. Outside, Trackstar National gradually making his way towards the leader. Black Train Blues behind them sitting 3rd. Then Fantastic Halfbacks back 4th. Midnight Specials behind them 5th. 6th comes YG Swift Run in front of Spaghetti Arms. 7th back to Tony Slugger in front of JMC Dragonstone, and parked out last, Silver and Gold coming to that halfway point. Trackstar National and Jay Harris a length in front of Killer on the Loose, the early leader, now residing in the pocket. Black Train Blues behind them 3rd. 4th comes Fantastic Halfback, and now out of the pocket off a 54.5. Killer on the Loose moves up to brush and circle the lead around that far turn. Trackstar National the inside 2nd. Black Train Blues 3rd from Fantastic Halfback 4th. Midnight Specials then sitting 5th. YG Swift Run is 6th. Silver and Gold is outside 7th. Locked in Spaghetti Arms, followed by Tony Slugger, and trailing JMC Dragonstone 3/4 bound. Killer on the Loose a length in front. Trackstar National the inside 2nd. Black Train Blues still sits 3rd. Silver and Gold advances uncovered as they pass 3/4. 122-3 out of 4th. Fantastic Halfback in pursuit of Killer on the Loose, who holds the lead at the top of the stretch. Killer on the Loose a length in front. Fantastic Halfback drops back 3 deep then. Spaghetti Arms in pursuit, dropping back to the inside. Trackstar National taking with him Black Train Blues. Fantastic Halfback now takes the lead as they come down to the 8th pole. Center of the track, JMC Dragonstone moving up for 2nd with Black Train Blues late. Fantastic Halfback though, home free to take the NAHU Champion Stakes in 147-4 from JMC Dragonstone, Black Train Blues, and Killer on the Loose. Well, folks, there was the NAHU Champion Stakes, sitting a rail trip. Fantastic Halfback pops off the rail at the top of the stretch, psychs him out for a bit, makes you think he's done, but then bammo whammo zing zong, he comes back on the outside of Killer on the Loose, who went a tough trip on the front, ended up dropping back to finish fourth in that race. $1 million NAHU Champion Stakes to Fantastic Halfback. Once again, you can catch North American Harness Update Fridays at 9 p.m. on SRN1. That's Eastern Daylight Time, because during daylight savings, that's the one you have to use apparently. You can't just say Eastern Standard Time. Time zones are not my forte. My forte, of course, is harness racing. I also said that in a pianissimo. That's a musical joke I just did, ladies and gentlemen. But all of that said and done, I have been, and maybe will continue to be, Ray Catola. I haven't really decided how the day's going to roll just yet. Thank you again for joining us for another edition of Off and Pacing Live, North American Harness Update, the internet's favorite harness racing handicapping show. Keep an eye out for last night's episode posting sometime today over on our Twitter at NA Harness Update. You can catch it on there. For now, I hope to see you next time when the horses are off and pacing. I haven't found a good closing for this just yet.